Hey friends, welcome back to my kitchen. I'm trying really hard to get back in the habit of prepping food, snacks, meals for my family, especially for my children. My two youngest children are in school, and then my next four are at home homeschooling, and my oldest two are out of the house. But it's really nice to have food already prepared for the week. Today is Tuesday, so this is for the rest of the week. Today I'm going to make deviled eggs, some gluten-free breakfast cookies, more of those peanut butter, fiber-filled protein snack balls, and chicken salad. I will include any recipes in the description below. One of the keys to a successful batch cooking day is to plan out your steps. I don't want to have any downtime. I want to put things in the Instant Pot to have them working while I prep other foods. If I have to put things in the oven, I want to make sure it's preheated and ready to go, and I want to time everything right so that nothing is waiting in the wings if at all possible. The first thing I'm doing is adding 5 or 6 frozen chicken breasts and about a cup of water to my 10-quart Instant Pot to get the chicken salad started. I'm going to put it on high pressure for 25 minutes. We'll let the pressure release naturally, and then we'll let it cool for a bit before we shred it and add the other ingredients. In my second Instant Pot, I am going to get our eggs started. This was such a game changer, learning to basically steam your eggs instead of boiling them on the stovetop. If you've ever tried to boil farm fresh eggs, you know the frustration of peeling them. These eggs are only a day or two old, and they would have been a complete train wreck if I had tried to boil them on the stovetop. Even adding vinegar or baking soda, all of the tricks, I've tried them and they just don't work consistently, but this is fail-proof every single time. Of course, I made sure I was only using clean eggs. You don't want any debris from the chicken coop to be on your eggshells when you go to steam them. I put it on high pressure for 8 minutes, and usually I will do the quick release of the steam and pressure, but on this particular day, I was pretty busy, so I just let it release naturally. Now I'm going to go ahead and get the extra ingredients prepped for my chicken salad. My chicken salad recipe is so incredibly simple. All I add are a handful of chopped pecans and about 2 apples diced up. This adds a little sweetness, a good bit of crunch. It's perfect. And then I add some mayonnaise to make it all come together. I don't even add any salt and pepper. It's really simple and my whole family loves it. Next, I'm going to get everything together that I need to make the gluten-free breakfast cookies. The only reason I add that they're gluten-free is so many people have gluten intolerances nowadays, and even though you may not be celiac or have a diagnosed allergy, you just feel better when you aren't consuming as much gluten, or maybe any at all. My daughter is one of those, so I'm trying to try out some new recipes, and this one looks really good. I totally understand when I am making a recipe with a lot of ingredients, why cooking shows and chefs put all their ingredients in front of them in individual containers rather than getting one thing out at a time and adding it to the bowl. It just helps assemble the recipe a lot easier. I am getting a whole lot more containers dirty, but I have a dishwasher for that. So I'm going to include the recipe below. I think I made a few little tweaks according to the printed recipe, but this calls for 2 ripe bananas, some flax meal, water. Have you ever made a flax egg before? It's a vegan thing. If you don't eat eggs, or if you have an allergy to eggs, then you can use 1 tablespoon of flax meal to 2.5 tablespoons of water, and you let it sit until it kind of gets a little gel-like, and you use that in place of an egg. Of course, eggs are a binding agent in most recipes, and that is what this flax meal does. Plus, it adds lots of great dietary fiber. You're also going to use peanut butter, melted butter. The recipe actually calls for coconut oil, but I don't really care for the way coconut oil flavors whatever you're baking with a bit of a coconut flavor, and I didn't want that, so I just added melted butter in this recipe instead. It's only 2 tablespoons. You use a little vanilla, honey, oats, and it called for oat flour and almond meal, but I used some Trim Healthy Mama baking mix instead. It has oat flour and almond meal along with some other healthy ingredients, including flax meal in there as well. but you can use oat flour and almond flour if you have it. A little baking powder, baking soda, a pinch of salt. I believe I added a few pinches of salt. Some finely chopped walnuts, but I used pecans because I didn't have any walnuts. And half a cup of chocolate chips. I knew the chocolate chips were probably going to be key to my children being excited to try them. And thankfully, I had some stevia sweetened Lily's brand chocolate chips, and that is what I used in this recipe. So I mixed my wet ingredients together first after I put the flax and water in the mixer to start to kind of incorporate. Then I added all of my dry ingredients together, the baking blend, the nuts, chocolate chips, baking powder, baking soda, and salt, gave it a good mix, and then I put all of my dishes away that I used to portion out all of the ingredients. Now we're going to add the wet ingredients to my flax egg, and then we'll incorporate the dry ingredients. At this point, I did go ahead and preheat my oven to 350 degrees. The recipe says it makes 26 cookies and I need to bake them for 15 to 17 minutes. The problem is I never actually portion out the batter or the dough as I'm supposed to, and I wanted to make sure that these cookies were sizable enough to fill my littlest one's bellies for breakfast, like we really are going to use it as a breakfast cookie. It's loaded with great nutritious ingredients, and so I made the cookies a little bigger and ended up with a dozen instead of 26. Those would have been 26 really small cookies, by the way. Before I put the cookies in the oven, I took my eggs out of the Instant Pot, set it in the sink, and filled it with cool water and a few scoops of ice. Now I'm going to go ahead and dice up all of the apples and roughly chop the pecans for my chicken salad, which reminds me, I need to go drain the broth out of my Instant Pot and let those chicken breasts start to cool so I can shred them up. The cookie batter was actually pretty wet and soft. It made it really difficult to form into my cookies, knowing that it wasn't really going to expand or rise. So when I did the second batch, which was just like 2 or 3 more cookies, I ended up forming them between my hands like a burger patty and gently flipping it over onto the parchment paper, which formed much nicer cookies with a more uniform shape. Now I'm going to peel these eggs. Look how easily all these peels, even in fast forward motion, are coming off of these eggs. These Instant Pot boiled eggs or steamed eggs peel in no time, nice and easy. Many of them peel like all in one big piece, which is so satisfying. I'm going ahead and getting them rinsed off and ready to cut and take the yolks out to make up our filling. I actually decided to use my dollar store meat masher to mash up all of these egg yolks. These were a bit more well done than I usually prefer, but the texture still came together nicely in the end. All I add to my egg yolks is enough mayonnaise to make it creamy, and then typically something extra to give it a little bit of tang or spice or even crunch. Sometimes I like to add finely diced dill pickles, but I didn't have any today, so I just added a generous squeeze of stone ground mustard. The first batch of breakfast cookies came out perfectly. The bottom is golden brown and the cookies themselves are still nice and soft. Again, I did make the last couple of cookies a little bit more uniform. The flavor on these is amazing. It's nice and filling and will definitely make them again. If you have never placed your chicken that needs to be shredded into your mixer with the cookie paddle to shred it up, then this will change your life. Seriously, about 30 seconds in the mixer and it's perfectly shredded. Now it's time to finish these deviled eggs. I simply scooped the mixture into a cheap sandwich bag and cut the tip off in order to fill these nicely. I then put the halves back together again so that it basically just looks like a boiled egg in the container so that the filling wouldn't make a big mess. My younger kids will be so excited to add these to their lunches. All right, I did chop up my shredded chicken just a little bit more so that I didn't have any long stringy pieces in my chicken salad. Now I'm going to mix together the apples, pecans, and chicken before I add the mayonnaise. Again, I don't add anything else to this chicken salad, and it is the absolute best. I don't really care for onions in my chicken salad. I don't like to add any sweetener. Some people use coleslaw dressing, but I feel like it's way too sweet. And I am allergic to raw celery, so I don't add that either. You can eat it by itself over a bed of lettuce, on a sandwich, with crackers, or if you're hosting something like a lunch, you could serve it on croissants. I just made this snack ball recipe a week or so ago, and it was a huge hit. Even my teenagers were pulling them out of the freezer as a snack in between meals. I switched up the recipe just a little bit this time to add a little more crunch. I used 1.5 cups of oats, 1.5 cups of Rice Krispies, a cup of flax meal, half a cup of chia seeds, which really helps it be nice and filling, a cup of peanut butter, 2/3 a cup of honey, 3 tablespoons of melted butter, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla. I'll include the recipe in the description box. Once you get it all well combined, put the whole bowl in the fridge for about 30 minutes so that it's easier to work with and form into balls. I like to stick it all in the freezer on a cookie sheet, and once they're nice and solid, I transfer it to either a Ziploc bag or a glass container so it's more easily accessible for packing in lunches or as a snack. I'd love to hear from you if you try any of these recipes. Thanks for watching.